Okay, Rico, here it goes. Gotta do this before they can shut me up. If you think my explanation is too complicated for the average Joe, then please help me make it simpler. And if you think it's clear enough, well then just edit this part out and let's tell the world what's coming. Oba, que sera, sera. Hello, I'm Dr. Salvatore Conti, but everyone calls me Dr. Sal. Today is August the 8th, 2012, and what I'm about to say here is extremely important. This is not a hoax. I'm not an actor. This is not a movie or some Mayans 2012 end of the world crap. Everything I say in the next few minutes, as preposterous as it may sound, is true. And after I expose it, I may actually have to disappear for a while. During the course of my explanation, I may have to use some technical terms, but please don't despair. I'm just trying to be thorough and help people corroborate what I'm saying. In the end, the message should be clear enough for everyone to understand it. Let me start by telling you a little bit about myself, so you can understand why I know the information I'm about to expose. For the past 22 years, I've worked for NASA at the JSC in Houston. I'm what you might call a rocket scientist, but I'm not really. I was born in Aranova, Italy in 1949, just outside of Rome. When I was 20, I moved to New York, and in 1972 I was admitted to Yale University in Connecticut, from where I got my doctorate degrees in applied mathematics and physics. In 1983, I was hired by DuPont to work at a plant near Houston, and after a few years I'd shown a pretty keen talent for interpreting data. So in 1990, NASA contacted me, claiming that they needed people just like me to gather and interpret information. At first I thought my new job was kind of boring, to be honest, but I guess they were just testing me for bigger plans. By 1993, my security clearance had been bumped up a few notches, and my job took an amazing turn. I was transferred to a very hush-hush department, which we conveniently call SARA, but is presented to the outside world, even within NASA, as the search and analysis of random astronomical radio emissions. Outside of SARA, we tell bullshit stories to other government entities, including other NASA personnel, but internally, I was introduced to a world that I had only dreamt about. It's no secret that NASA has always been interested in searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, and for years, the Arecibo radio telescope in Puerto Rico has been used to track down potential signals as well as to send signals of our own. Now, I'm not talking Roswell or Little Green Men here. There are some actual visual contacts, but there's no physical contact, at least that I know of, and my security clearance is pretty high on these matters. But the fact is that some recent UFO sightings, I believe, that are actually related to what I'm going to talk about in a minute. But most of the information running around out there is false. What I'm talking about here is fact. And what I'll tell you in a moment is way scarier than the scariest ghost story you've ever heard. Most of the signals NASA was able to process through the Arecibo radio telescope were of the type we call RANS, which are random emissions from natural sources, and for which my department doesn't particularly care much for. These are mostly CMB, synchrotron radiation, interstellar scintillation, noise. But every once in a while we'd encounter a much more intriguing type of signal, that which we call an EPAS, which are emissions from a potentially artificial source. We could never establish the origin of any of them, or even how old they were, and like the wall signal, they were all one-time bursts. But their prophet told us that they could be from an artificial source, that the sources broadcasting them had control over the signals, and in that case, that they were intended for other intelligent beings. It's my department's job to try to make some sense of PPAS signals, but we could never establish any protocol, mostly because of their unilateral nature. We couldn't send questions or get any feedback that could help us sort them out. But then in the mid-90s, way before Berkeley SETI at home and all the point projects, we reached another level. HAARP had come into the equation, and NASA wanted a piece of the action. Now, I'm not going to waste your time or mine trying to explain the HAARP project. I'm not going to talk about the conspiracy theories, which most are honestly, just ridiculous. If you don't know what HAARP is, just Google it. It's the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, or HAARP. And the fact is that one of its most important purposes is to research ionospheric radio communications, which is kind of like geek rapture for my department. We used HAARP aggressively. Every time we had a chance, broadcasting in every direction and assuming nothing. 16 years ago, on July 2nd, 1996, we sent a transmission we called the Red, White, and Blue message, in which we included 4th of July allegories. On May 29, 1997, RENS and even EPAS signals became chicken feed. On that day, we heard our first BOIS, that's BOIS, which stands for Bilateral Organized Interstellar Signal. Why bilateral? Well, because the message contained common elements with the Red, White, and Blue message. So we immediately knew that it was a direct reply to us. Now, people who know a little about interstellar radio communications will say to that, that's impossible, that's too fast. We'll talk about that in a moment. The fact is that we now had a contact out there. My superiors decided to keep this extremely secret at first, mostly because all previous reports of possible contacts had always been ridiculed after they were proven false, at the time when they're still uncomplied. And so through the Milky Way at Home and the Astropulse project, through the Teenage and the Cosmic Call messages, through all those attempts at communications, we kept our mouths shut. Another reason for our silence is the fact that there are a few baffling things about voices. The signals all come from Ursula Major, from an area north of Delta Ursa Majoris and south of the Hubble Deep Field. The sources actually register with slight measurable changes, but even if we assume that they all come from the point that's nearest us in that area, it would be over 58 light years away, a mind-boggling detail. Our 1996 Red, White, and Blue message wasn't supposed to reach any potential recipient in my lifetime. And that's just one way. So we weren't expecting any reply anytime soon, but, well, their technology, we still don't understand it. But the fact is that from the moment we broadcast a message to the moment we receive a reply to it, it only takes 331 days. It's always been 331 days. A prime number. Of course, that's in Earth days. Who knows how long that is to them? So, regardless of the time it takes them to receive, process, and answer our messages, and then send a reply to us, we always receive it in that time frame. And since their handing of our message probably doesn't take a fixed amount of time, then we assume that the time frame is actually tied to the technology behind it. May 29, 1997 was the first time we were using HAARP's IRI 331 days after a previous transmission of ours. We were obviously amazed at the incredible quickness of the reply, and from then on, we started scheduling a 10-day window around 331 days after any transmission we'd send. Besides, of course, any other times when we have access to HAARP. But eventually it became a 3-day window, since replies always come on a 331, as we call them. And so we slowly started understanding some of the things they were telling us, and to establish some protocol and rules for communications. But we are still babies when it comes to their technology. I mean, some of the things they're capable of are just too unearthly. And you may ask, well, how do they look? Or what do they eat? Or how's the world where they live? The answer to those and to many other questions you all may have is actually, we don't know. Better yet, we still don't understand many things. So we've only been in touch for 15 years, and we only get to send and hence receive a few messages per year. And you may say to that, well then, send messages every day and receive replies every day 331 days later. But it's not that simple. There are many factors which prevent us from sending as many messages as we'd like. money being one of them, of course. Also, since every transmission is pending a reply for 331 days, we don't really gain that much by rushing it. It would become like one of those chat rooms where messages overlap each other, sometimes making no sense. Except this chat room is infinitely more complicated and pricier. You also have to realize that we were dealing with something completely alien, no pun intended. So it was pretty much just a trial and error thing going on. You have to understand that these transmissions are not like the ones you get on your TV or your car radio. These aren't pictures or videos. We don't even know if the office can distinguish color or even see in the human sense. These messages are intelligently arranged sequences of bits and beats, gaps and clicks, clusters of clicks, simple monochromatic bitmaps, and we don't know how they interpret them. That's where my department comes in. We had to develop means for successful communication, and at first, they were just basic observations, like letting us know that they know who and where we are, that they like our planet and our star. But oddly enough, and in spite of our insistence in questioning them, they've never specified where they're broadcasting from. They just say that we're still not capable of understanding, and don't even agree or deny if the signals are coming from the area where we believe they originate from. We believe that they have understood what we've sent them since very early on. It's us who are still trying to interpret their broadcast. Their concepts are not at our level. They're hundreds, maybe thousands of years ahead of us. And not just in terms of evolution, but also of their understanding of the universe and its laws. After we started understanding some of the things that they were telling us, the office started sending us some scientific and technological information, most of which falls into the category of unintelligible data for us, but some of which we can't understand. And this is where the really bad news comes. On January 20th, 2011, we received a transmission from the office that wasn't in reply to one of ours. It wasn't on a 331 either, it was just on a date we happened to have access to HARP. We were still working on interpreting it when 53 days later, on March 14th, which was a 331, we received the exact same data again. The uniqueness of the situation, and from what we had already gathered from the first transmission, it prompted a sense of urgency among myself and my colleagues. We don't know how many times the message was sent from their end, but in the next few months, we received 2 more transmissions with the exact same data. By then it was irrelevant, because within days of the second transmission we had agreed on an interpretation. And, well, to be honest and put it bluntly, it sent panic throughout Sarah. So we sent a transmission questioning the information, trying to verify if our interpretation was correct. This was on April 27th, 2011. Last March 23rd, we received a short, simple voice which confirmed our biggest fear with a very pressing yes. Now, very few people know about this, well, until now. But some of our superiors disagree with parts of our interpretation of this extremely important information, and accordingly, the NASA High Brass has decided to keep this extremely secret. Mostly, of course, to prevent a worldwide chaos and panic, and maybe because they think there's still time to deal with this. But you can't stick your head in the sand. The message is what the message is. We're 100% certain of it. And I'm going to explain it to the world right now. Just please bear with me. Our ET friends have given us a very ominous prediction. In a nutshell, our planet is going to go through a process we call a geomagnetic reversal, but a rare kind that happens very quickly, and its most intense drifting will take place between June 14th and August 19th, 2016. Now, a geomagnetic reversal does not mean that the planet is going to flip over and that everything is going to shift and shake violently in an apocalyptic devastation. The planet's actually gone through geomagnetic reversals many times. Most of these happen very slowly over many, many years. But we're certain that they do happen every few 100,000 years by looking at fossil records, which show changes in the magnetic orientation of rocks. So what are geomagnetic reversals? Well, put as simply as possible, our planet's core is made of a giant superheated solid metal ball covered by liquid metal. As both move and flow inside our planet as the Earth turns, this combination creates a dynamo effect, which in turn creates the magnetic field around the planet. In a geomagnetic reversal, changes in the flow of the core make the magnetic field unstable at first, and then cause it to drift, and finally to reestablish itself with its poles in opposite positions from where they were when the reversal started. Now, the continents and the oceans are still going to be where they are right now. It's the invisible magnetic field that's going to flip. And by the way, let me make something clear here. Like I said before, this is not a movie. I once saw a movie in which the core stops flowing, so they have to do ridiculously unbelievable things to get it started again, or else the magnetic field would disappear and the Earth would get fried by microwave radiation from the solar wind. As clever as that may sound, it's nonsense. What the Alphys are warning us about is, unfortunately, real science. Now, when the last reversal took place, which was about 780,000 years ago, there were already some early ancestors of ours, and anthropologists haven't found evidence which shows that it caused any major alteration on those early humans. But that last reversal was like most are, very slow over many, many years. The reversals Alphys say is about to happen is a kind that is very fast. For all we know, the process may have started already, and we may be witnessing events which may be related to the 2016 event, like all these weather changes and seismological activity. The magnetic North Pole is migrating fast toward northern Russia. The fact is that the rate of polar migration for this next reversal will increase exponentially to a peak during the summer of 2016, when, according to the Alphys, in a period of 66 days, it will amount to 124.72 degrees. That's almost 70% of the total reversal in a little more than 2 months, something that usually takes hundreds to thousands of years. This event will be like one that's been proven from analysis of the lava basalts on Steens Mountain in Oregon. 15 million years ago, a reversal took place in which the rate of change was as fast as 6 degrees per day. That's over 3 times faster than the average drift of under 2 degrees per day expected for June through August 2016. But this rate of change isn't fixed for the 66 days. The days in the middle of the whole period should be the ones with the fastest change. And here's the rub. What the Alphys are determining and making us know is that in 2016, the quick change in polarity will make the Van Allen radiation belt to drop to Earth. What does that mean? Well, the Van Allen belt is actually made up of 2 enormous clouds of highly charged particles that exist around our planet and which are held in our planet's magnetosphere by the magnetic field. When the magnetic field becomes unstable due to the quick flip of its poles, the Van Allen belt will collapse and its particles will pretty much bombard the Earth with a lot of radiation. Based on what our alien friends say and from our own calculations, the amount of radiation that will reach the surface will be devastating. Most land-based plants and animals and those living near the surface of the sea will be killed, including an expected 75 to 80% human mortality rate. And those who do survive will be affected in ways that we can only theorize, not just physically, but also physiologically and genetically. No, the sun won't fry us with microwave radiation. That's just sci-fi movies' pretentious attempts at colloquial enlightenment. But the highly charged banalin particles. In the message we sent them in April 2011, we also asked them this question: wouldn't the atmosphere stop these particles? In the reply, last March 23rd, they answered that yes, a large percentage would be filtered by the atmosphere, but the amount that will still go through will be enough to cause all this damage. So, first the reversal starts, for the most part undetectably early on. Then compasses start acting weird as the field destabilizes and multiple poles start forming and shifting. Animals may be confused and act weirdly, which happens occasionally when minor magnetic disturbances take place. Let me just throw this in as a thought. Have you noticed how many cases of normal people suddenly going crazy and doing unthinkable things are happening lately? It all makes sense. There are certainly no zombies, but I believe that some of the weakest, most vulnerable minds are already being affected by the earliest, slightest magnetic disturbances. We may see that the already intense seismological and climatological activity increase, not just by the changes in the magnetic field, but mostly because of the whirling taking place inside our planet. And then the banalin radiation will start hitting the surface of the planet sometime during the summer and fall of 2016. Even when it does, it may be somewhat silent during its early stages, until of course we start noticing the deterioration happening all around us to plants and animals, and of course us humans. If you're asking yourself, is he kidding? Does the government know? Why are they keeping it quiet? One, no, I'm not kidding. Two, I don't know if the high ranks in the government know, but three, the people who do know can make internal decisions on how to deal with this. And their decision, at least for now, is in part due to a stupid state of denial that I can't understand anymore, because we've been certain of our assessment for over a year now, confirmed last March 23rd. And of course, to some degree, because there's fear of major worldwide anarchy. But I'm telling the world what's coming because there may be hope. We can't stop the reversal, that's impossible. But the impending damage that the banalin radiation can cause, 6 billion minds working together for one cause, for one goal, we can achieve wonders and reach unbelievable objectives. Years ago, with intentions aimed at protecting astronauts and satellites and other devices which are exposed to the banalin radiation, a Russian physicist, Dr. Danilov, proposed that the belts may be drained of their high-energy particles through man-made devices. Two other physicists, Dr. Robert Hoyt and the late Dr. Robert Forward, continued Danilov's work and actually designed prototype devices for the task. Danilov's idea is to put very long, highly charged tethers on satellites orbiting the planet. The strong electrical charge in the tethers would deflect the particles in the belts and theoretically drain them. This is plausible, and it's at least a start. And who knows what other ideas might come out when more and more people start putting their 2 cents in. Of course, this project would cost many billions of dollars and should require the whole world's involvement. Yes, the whole world's involvement. Because we have to work together. I'm sure the powers that be would have exposed all this to the world at some point, and maybe there's a plan I don't know of. But I believe that we all can and must put our differences aside and work together to save mankind. Even though I was born and raised in the core of everything Catholic, I'm not a religious person. And as a diehard scientist, I'm pretty skeptical of things that can't be proven by science. And yet, I'm sure I'm more spiritual than most extremist fanatics who abide by primitive barbaric beliefs. I believe that there might be what you might call God, which is not a man and certainly doesn't reward us for killing others because they think differently. Call it what you may, be it Yahweh or Jehovah, Allah, Brahma, Ahura Mazda, Waheguru, Baha. They're all the same. If there is a God, there's only one. And it doesn't want men to mistreat women. It doesn't need us to harakiri or immolate ourselves. We don't even have to fast to prove we're worthy of its grace. And I'm not sure if there's an afterlife, but I am 100% sure that there is no hell. And if there is an afterlife, it's definitely not one of flesh and blood. To avoid the 2016 tragedy, we can't think of God as biased and unforgiving. If only for the next couple of years, we have to deny destiny, which I call an esoteric turd, and instead take action and make our own. Buddhists and Hindus and Sikhs can't see karma as a spiritual system of reward or punishment served in this material world. Christians have to stop believing that Jesus is the only way to salvation. Jews can't think of themselves as the chosen ones, and Muslims have to reject their belief that God wants them to kill non-Muslims. If you really think about it, all this ethnocentrics are us crap is essentially not so different from Hitler and the Nazis. There is only one race, the human race. Richard Dawkins very accurately says that we are all Africans, which brings us all together. If we don't put our differences aside, if we don't embrace a more modern, global, and intelligent way of thinking, in 4 years, the human race, the only one, is doomed. Thank you very much.